In this tutorial, I will show you how you can write a simple program that will repeatedly prompt the user for values like integer, strings, or character, boolean, any values until the user wants to quit. So this is a very common pattern you have to learn in order to extend it to more complicated loops, even nested loops, in order to suit your needs. So let's start with something simple. If you launch your Eclipse, make sure you create a project, Java project called CSE114 tutorials loops, and we will create different packages inside these projects for different topics. So for this tutorial, we're going to create something called just create a package. So that has something to do with loops. So just create a package called loops. So all the loops related Java classes will be put inside this loops package. If you right click on the package and say new class, and let's say the first class we're going to create will be let's say repeatedly prompt user for inputs, let's say, and with a main method. Okay. So because we're going to read values from the user, so let's declare our scanner objects. Scanner variable here, let's just call the input equals new scanner system .in. Right. So now the idea is, let's say this, while the user does not want to quit, we keep prompting them for input values. Let's say in this case, the input value is simply just integer. Okay. So now, how can we do that? So now, let's just say we keep prompting them for input values. So it seems like each individual step is to prompt them for an input value. And then later on, we can wrap that as the body of a while loop. That's sort of the idea. So let's do the individual step first. First of all, how do we prompt the user for an integer value? You would say system.out.println. Okay, you can say enter an integer value. And then we'll try to use the scanner objects to read it. So input, you would declare an integer value. Let's say integer n for number is assigned to input dot next int. And once we have read the input value, let's say we simply just print it out. Okay, system.out.println. You just entered n. Okay, so now this is actually after the so this is the individual step. So for each individual step, we're going to prompt the user for an integer value and store that in a variable n, and then print out the value of n. Okay, that's a very simple individual step. But we want to keep doing this until the user explicitly wants to quit. So the way we do this is by wrap this fragment of code into a while loop. So the while loop will be useful when you are not really sure how many times specifically you're going to repeat the individual steps, because now it's really at the discretion of the user. If they want to repeat for 10 times, they might just keep they might just keep entering 10 numbers afterwards. They will actually say, no, I don't want to continue. Or they actually want to enter 20 numbers or 30 numbers. So it really depends on the user. So we're going to use a while loop, and I will talk about this state condition in a moment. And now we're going to have a while loop. And the body of the while loop is going to be this fragment of code. So you can go to edit and cut. Okay. And now we're going to paste that over here. So now, which means every time if the state condition which we're going to put here is true, we're going to keep repeating this individual step. So now, how do we define this state condition here. So the way to do this is by using a boolean variable to say initially, let's say boolean variable here, and let's say user wants to enter another value. Okay, so the initial value, should that be true or false? It should be true because we're going to use this boolean variable and put it as a state condition. If you actually put this to be false, the problem is you put it to be false, then the first time when you check the state condition for the while loop, it is going to evaluate to false for sure. So it is not even going to execute the body of the while loop for even the first time, which means you never prompt the user for the input value. So false is not appropriate. So you should really say true over here. And now, if up to now we actually declare the variable and say as long as it is true, we're going to stay in the loop and keep repeating the prompts and store the number and then echo the number back. However, it seems like we have no way to actually set this variable to be false, which means this loop will never end. Okay, the loop will only end if this boolean variable here becomes false. But it seems like in here, the body of the loop, we actually have no way, we didn't actually write any line to assign that value to be false. So when should we assign that to false, which means we want to exit from the loop? We only do that if the user explicitly says that. And in order for them to say that, we have to just prompt them to say, would you like to continue? If they say yes, of course, we'll actually set the boolean variable to be false so that when we go back to evaluate this state condition again, it's going to be false. So which means we'll exit from the loop. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So you would say, first of all, you'll prompt the user again, system.out.println. Would you like to enter another value? Or would you just say, would you like to continue? Anyway, any wording that's appropriate. You can say either yes or no. Okay, that's our convention here. So now you can say string answer that the user is going to enter from the keyboard is assigned to input.nextLine, which means we are trying to read a line from the console, from the keyboard. So now remember we said before, whenever you actually have a mix between next int and next line, you actually have to follow each next int by next line. By a next line's statement here. Okay, that's what you do. For each next int, you need to have a next line statement here. Okay, so now we had to say once we read the answer from the user, we have to check to see if that one is equals to just y for yes. In case it is, then they want to continue. So this can be remain true. Otherwise, this should be set to false. Okay, so we'd say answer. Let me just try the longer way to do it, and then I'll show you how to simplify that. You can say if answer dot equals y, then we can set this to be still true. User wants to enter another value is equal to true. Otherwise, if it is not y, it can be no, can be n, anything else is considered as a no. So here you can say user wants to enter another value would be false. Okay, that's one way to do it. However, these lines can actually be simplified because you're saying that whenever this expression here returns true, you're going to set this variable here to be true. Otherwise, if this value here returns false, then you're going to set this variable here to be false. So why not just assign whatever value that is returned by this expression here directly to this variable here. So that's how the simplification goes. So let's put this in comments. And now we can do user wants to continue another value is assigned directly to the result by comparing answer and y. Okay, so now we're done. So basically, we're saying that we're going to keep prompting the user for an integer value, and then we're going to echo that back to the console. And whenever we are done with the current step, we're going to prompt the user again to say, would you like to enter another value? Would you like to continue? If they say yes, then we're going to set this boolean variable to remain true, so that we will actually keep this state condition to be true. So we'll keep going, keep repeating the iteration step for one more time. Otherwise, if they enter anything other than y, then we're going to set this boolean variable to be false, which means that when we go back to the header of the while loop, the state condition here has been set to false. So we are not going to execute the body of the loop for one more time, and we're done. Okay, let's try that, and then we'll see the debugger. Okay, so if you try that, you'll see that enter integer value, let's say 1. Would you like to, you just enter 1. So this is 1, the first step, the first iteration. Would you like to enter another value? So I would say y. Yes. So now enter another integer value, and 2. And would you like to continue? So let's say no. Okay, then we're done. You can also actually, after the while loop, you can say system.out.println by here, and now if you do it again, so now 1, I would like to continue, y, let's say 5. I would like to continue, let's say 10. I would like to continue one more, let's say 15. I don't want to continue anymore, say n, or just say no. So no is other than y, so that's taken as a no. Oh, it was a by. Okay, so now let's see how this example works in the debugger in slow motion. So put a breakpoint over here, and then we'll say run debug as Java application. So now we are at a point where right before we try to set user wants to continue, wants to enter another value to be true, right before that. So in the variables panel here, you don't see user wants to enter another variable here. It's not declared yet. But as soon as we actually say step over, now you can see user wants to enter another value has been set to true initially. So now when we say while true over here, if you also move your mouse over, you can see currently the boolean variable has a value true. So we are going to enter into the loop and prompt the user for a value, let's say 1. Okay, and then step over, and now it's gonna say you have just entered. So if you move your mouse over, just 1. Okay, so now it's going to prompt you again, would you like to enter another value? Okay, so now we're going to enter, let's say y for yes. So now it is going to actually to see if the input we just entered, answer, which is y, is that really equal to y? To do this, we can actually see the expressions panel. So if you, I don't see the expressions panel here, so you can go to Window, Show View, and then Expressions. Okay, it's here. So now you can actually do answer dot equals y. You can see that's going to return true. So we can predict that this is going to assign true to user wants to enter another variable. If you do that, you can see that user wants to enter another value has been set to true, remains to be true. So it's going, that means the state condition is true. So we're going to evaluate, we're going to execute the body of the loop one more time. Okay, enter an integer value, let's say this time 10. Okay, you can see now n has been set to 10. Okay, and we echo that back. You can see the console here. So now, would you like to continue? Okay, let's say no. in this case, you can see the, and then we step over, you can see the answer now has been set to no. If you go back to the expression view, you can see answer.equals y is now false, which means we're going to assign false to this boolean variable here. As soon as we do that, you can see we are back to the beginning of the loop, the header of the loop. And now you can see that this state condition here is false, which means we're going to exit from the loop and then say bye. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Basically, let me recap. So in order to actually keep prompting the user for some action, maybe you want the user to enter an integer value, you want the user to actually enter maybe row and column of the tic-tac-toe game, or you want to prompt the user for anything. In that case, you want to repeatedly prompt the user to do some action. The way to do that is, first of all, you put down the individual step each time the action you want the user to repeat, first of all, and then you wrap it inside a while loop. And to control the exit of the while loop, we use a boolean variable, which initially has been set to true, to say as long as the user wants to continue to perform the action, we can remain this variable to be true. Okay, and then we need to have a way to actually update the value of this variable here. The way to do that is do that at the end of each iteration step, or at the end of the body of the loop. In that case, we simply prompt the user again to ask if they want to continue. For example, would they like to enter another integer value? If and then they're going to answer. So the answer is going to be a line from the console. In that case, if they want to continue, they will answer y, and we're going to compare the answer with the string y using the equals method. And whatever value we get from this expression here, which might be true or false. In the case where it is true, that means the user wants to continue to enter another value, for example. In that case, the state condition is going to be true, so we're going to execute the step one more time. In the case where they enter anything other than y, which means this expression here will be false, and we assign false to this boolean variable here. And then when we go back to the header of the loop, the state condition now becomes false. So we're going to exit from the loop without executing the body of the loop anymore. Okay, that's really the pattern you really have to understand very well, because for more complicated programs, whenever we say we want to keep prompting the user for some information, this is exactly the pattern you have to follow. Make sure you understand that. Don't memorize the code. You have to understand how the boolean variable has been used to control the entrance and exit of, of the while loop. Okay, stay watching.